Let's talk about PowerPlays. This is one of the best patterns there is. I think, it's hard to say for sure, but this is definitely one of my favorite patterns. I learned this from two-time investment champion Mark Minervini on Minervini Private Access, along with his assistant Mark Ritchie II, whose portfolio has returned 1,000% in 10 years. Why do I like the PowerPlay? Well, at first glance, it's scary, but that's not why. For two reasons. One, it can go up explosively in just a short amount of time. Two, it's really easy to see when it's not working, and you can get out without wasting a lot of time. And three, as Thoreau says, they really march to a beat of a different drummer. They're kind of their own animal, and to a large extent, they ignore the direction of the market. They're news-driven. They're usually biotechs when a major drug or procedure gets approved. Not always, but usually biotechs. Because they're so news-driven, investors jump in and ignore the direction of the market. Here, I'm going to show you three of them: 𝐂𝐻RO, 𝐼MVT, and then hopefully PowerPlay in the making, 𝑚ACK. And if you stick around to the end, I will show you a stock that's not a PowerPlay, but could have gotten confused as one. So I'll tell you the general parameters, then I'll tell you the specifics from Mark Minervini's book, one of his two investing books. And then we will look at our examples. So in general, you want to see an explosive move of over 100% in a short amount of time on big volume. And here we see, well, let me go over the parameters first. And then you want to see it stay really tight, and you want to see the volume quiet down. This indicates that even though it's gone up over 100% in a short amount of time, sellers are not selling. They're sticking around because they know that it has much more upside potential. The big investors, the buyers in the know, so to speak, aren't selling. And then we look for a breakout, and away we go. Let me show you the specifics straight from Mark Minervini's book. Before I do, just remember, this is not investment advice. This is just for education, just for entertainment. I'm just teaching you my favorite chart pattern. So a couple of my Patreon members were talking about PowerPlays. I think it was yesterday, and this Patreon member, I believe his name is Siddhat, I don't know, I'm probably butchering your name, sorry. So he quoted Minervini's book here, Think and Trade Like a Champion, from page 165, where he goes over PowerPlays. By the way, there's a link to this book in the description of the video. So, a PowerPlay, number one, you need an explosive price move on huge volume, propels the stock price 100% or more within 8 weeks. Stocks that have already made a huge gain coming off of a late stage base, that they don't qualify, that's more of a climax run. Best PowerPlays are stocks that were quiet coming out of a stage one, a stock that's been sliding sideways, that's been ignored for weeks or months, and then suddenly explodes. Number two, following in the explosive move, the stock price moves sideways in a relatively tight range, not correcting more than 20%. Some of the low price stocks, you can give them a little more wiggle room, up to 25% for a period of 3 to 6 weeks. But then he changes that and he says some can emerge after only 10 or 12 days. And it seems like about 12 to 20 days is the sweet spot, anecdotally speaking. Three, if the correction is in a base, if the correction in the base from high to low does not exceed 10%, it is not necessary to see price tightening in the form of volatility contraction. The price is already tight enough. So let's look at our two really good examples here. So Akero Therapeutics, 𝐂𝐻RO, you see it was in a long downtrend, then it based for 1, 2, 3, 4 months. Suddenly you have this explosive, huge volume move where it ran from 12 to 26. That's in excess of 100%. And then it stayed really tight, and the volatility contracted. It went from 15%, I'm not going to measure, but that's probably like 5%. Notice how the volume quieted down. Now we want it to slide sideways or drift downwards just a bit and tighten up for at least 10 days. 12 to 20 is the sweet spot. This one we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Exactly 10. And notice how we had this final little shakeout. That's something you'll see a lot. The final little shakeout to shake out the weak hands before it really moves. So this is a flag, a high type flag. We could also call this a descending triangle. And so when it breaks out of that line of resistance there, that's where you buy. And I actually did buy this one. I played it. I believe I bought it here and sold half here and then got out on the poor earnings reaction. Here now it's up to all-time highs and fading back again. Let's see if it can make some sort of bigger base here. Not sure whether this one is done moving or not. I'll show just a couple other things. This is called a pause pivot, when the stock pauses for just one day. This is definitely a high-risk entry point, but you could do an entry point there if you miss the breakout, setting the stop just beneath it. And then these are called natural reactions, when it runs, and then here's another little pause pivot, and then it pulls back for just 2 or 3 days, and then quickly bounces to new all-time highs. That's exactly what you want to see. That's healthy price movement, this one as well. All right, as you know, it's risky trading around earnings because earnings often changes the character of a stock. Let's look at the second one. IMVT, Immunovant Incorporated. This is another biotech. So again, we see a downtrend and then a multi-month base. And here, instead of a big gap up, we see a flagpole. So you look for big gap ups and you look for flag pulls from 450 to about 10. That's over 100%. Gigantic volume, way bigger than any volume this stock's ever seen. And then we look for it to stay tight and to digest for a while. Sure enough, it only pulled back 15%. And we count the days, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So as soon as it hits day 10, then you look for a breakout. And this is, as much an art as it is a science. Now this one didn't stay as tight. It had a lot of these candle wicks. We see that more often with these lower price stocks. Yeah, Acro was fair amount more expensive. So you want to buy when it gets above most of the supply, which probably you would have probably gotten in either right here in mid-October or the following day right here. Then you had a quick natural reaction of 2 days, tennis ball action to new highs, and really good reaction to earnings, natural reaction, quick run to new highs. Now it's selling off a little bit for a handful of more days. It'll be interesting to see what it does here. Maybe it'll pause out and make us a nice high type flag. Maybe it'll make a base up here, or maybe it's done. Now, what you can do, what I like to do if I'm lucky enough to get into one of these, is I sell it after just a handful of days and lock in that big profit. It's usually 30 or 40% or something like that. And I sell a third or half, and then I put my stop at my purchase price. It's called backstopping, which here would have been about 27. And then I follow the 50-day simple moving average. And I keep my stop just a point or two beneath the 50-day simple moving average. And then I either sell if the stock starts to make a climax run. I sell if it starts to break down, if there's just a big character change and it starts to fall apart. But otherwise, if it just drifts down like this, I will let it drift all the way down to the 50-day because a lot of the institutions like to buy the first time it touches the 50-day moving average. If you go through 1,000 charts, you will notice that when a stock starts a new uptrend, the first time it touches the 50-day simple moving average, it often bounces off, keeps going up. Here is my last stock, well, except for the bonus stock. This is 𝗦𝘂𝐾𝐍𝐿. I am salivating over this one. I'm really hoping that we can get into it soon. So here we see this is an inverted scallop, and then a gap down, and then here we have some base of sorts. Gigantic explosion from, well, basically 4 to 12. That's 300%. But even though the stock went up 300%, it only sold off 20%. The vast majority of the investors who bought down here are not willing to sell for 300%. What does that tell you? That tells you that probably the stock is going to go a lot higher. It's drifting down just a little bit, which is fine. We want it to stay within 25%. And be nice if it even had a little shakeout close to or even beneath this gap up day. And then we want to see it tighten up. We want to see volume get quiet. And then we want to see it take off to the upside. Now, I would set an alarm. I would set an alert. So now you're going to want to watch this thing every day, but also set an alert at like 12:50, because if it explodes through there, then I at least will be wanting to get on board. But if it drifts down and then flattens out sideways, we might be able to get in even a little earlier when it starts to make its move up. We always buy when a stock is moving in the direction of the trade. If we are long, if we want to go long, we wait for the stock to be moving up. If we're shorting, we wait for the stock to be moving down, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we've got our 10 days. Be nice for it to base out for just a few more days. Let's watch it. Maybe it'll move Wednesday or Friday. We'll find out. Okay, let me show you one that's not a power play. This is old Tilray, a marijuana stock from 2018. I remember when it made this explosive move. And yes, it ran from 25 to 325. That's over 100% in less than 8 weeks. So we have that part of the move, but it doesn't tighten up. It made this climax run and immediately sold off really hard. So if you see something like this, watch it, but you want to see some tight, quiet price action for 10 to 30 days. You don't want to see a big sell-off like that. And that, fellow investors, is all you need to know about PowerPlays. It's really a pretty simple pattern. It's scary. You know, a lot of investors, they see that a stock has run up 200%, 300%, and they're like, no way I'm touching that. I buy stocks when they're low. But that seem paradoxically, these are some of the best performing patterns, especially in a bear market. As you can see, these things can really go even when the general market is selling off. Well, let me know your thoughts on PowerPlays. If you have any other symbols for me of stocks that are forming into PowerPlays, that'd be great. You might want to check out my Patreon. I post my current portfolio and focus list on every weekend. It's only $5. I think that's all I have to say. Market seems to be warming up just a little bit. I'm seeing a little less volatility, a little more stable progress, which is nice. I think it all depends on what the Fed has to say on December 14th. I think that could really kick things off in earnest, or it could torpedo us. We'll find out. Okay, take care, everybody.